Society constantly tells us to grind, to put our heads down, sacrifice our sleep, and work harder than everyone else. But what if I told you that the hardest worker in the room is almost always the one who loses? This is the story of two friends, and by the end of this video, you will never look at your daily routine the exact same way again. Long ago, in a remote mountain village lived two childhood friends, David and John. They were both young, ambitious, and desperately wanted to lift their families out of poverty. Their village had one massive problem. It had no natural water supply. Every drop of water had to be hauled up a steep, treacherous 3-mile dirt path from a lake in the valley below. One day, the village elders made an announcement. They would pay 1 silver coin for every single bucket of fresh water brought to the village square. To David and John, this wasn't just a job, it was the opportunity of a lifetime, the ticket to the life they had always dreamed of. The very next morning, David sprinted to the market. He bought the 2 largest, heaviest wooden buckets he could afford. He strapped a thick wooden yoke across his shoulders and marched down the mountain. John, however, took a different approach. He bought 2 standard, medium-sized buckets. But he also bought something else, a small leather journal and a charcoal pencil. David was a machine. By sunrise, he was already at the lake. He filled his massive buckets to the brim and began the grueling hike up the mountain. The weight was agonizing. The wooden yoke dug deep into his collarbones, leaving painful raw blisters. Sweat stung his eyes. But every time he wanted to quit, he thought of the silver coins. He made 3 trips that first day. 6 massive buckets, 6 silver coins. He was ecstatic. John, on the other hand, made only 1 trip. He carried his 2 standard buckets up the mountain, collected his 2 coins, and then he stopped. Instead of going back down, John sat at the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley. He pulled out his leather journal, stared at the landscape, and began to sketch. Days turned into weeks. David was relentless. He worked from dawn until midnight. He bought a lantern so he could haul water in the pitch black. He was making more money than anyone in the village. The villagers praised him. "Look at David," they would whisper. "Now that is a man who knows the value of hard work. He is destined for greatness." But David was decaying. His posture was completely ruined. His hands were covered in thick, bleeding calluses. He was so exhausted that when he wasn't hauling water, he was passed out in his bed. He had money, but absolutely no time or energy to enjoy it. John's routine remained a mystery to the village. He would haul water for just 2 hours a day, barely enough to feed himself. The rest of the time, he was nowhere to be found. He was seen wandering the deep woods, inspecting the terrain, and dragging long, hollowed-out bamboo shoots back to his small cabin. One evening, David caught John carving out the inside of a massive bamboo stalk. David laughed, his voice raspy from exhaustion. "John, my friend, what are you doing with your life?" David mocked. "You are playing with sticks in the mud while I am building an empire. You need to work harder, sleep less, grind. The silver is just sitting there waiting to be taken." John didn't look up from his work. He just smiled softly and said, "David, you are trading your body for silver. I am trading my time so I won't have to. Please be careful. You only have one back." David scoffed and walked away, adjusting the painful yoke on his bruised shoulders. He thought John was just lazy, a dreamer who didn't understand what it took to succeed. Months passed. Winter arrived. The mountain path turned to ice. This was David's nightmare. The heavy buckets threw off his balance. One morning, halfway up the mountain, his foot slipped. He tumbled down the rocky slope, shattering his wooden buckets and tearing a ligament in his knee. David was devastated. His body was broken. He could no longer carry the massive buckets. His income dropped to 0 overnight. He sat in his dark home, watching his hard-earned savings slowly disappear just to buy food. The hardest worker in the village had nothing left to give. Then, one crisp morning, A strange sound echoed through the silent village. It wasn't the sound of boots on dirt. It wasn't the creaking of a wooden yoke. It was a rushing, splashing sound. David grabbed a cane and limped to the village square. A massive crowd had gathered. He pushed his way to the front, and his jaw dropped. There stood John, and next to him was a large wooden trough. Pouring into the trough was a continuous, crystal-clear stream of fresh water.
John hadn't been wasting his time. He hadn't been lazy. While David was destroying his body, John had spent those months designing, mapping, and building a gravity-fed pipeline using the hollowed-out bamboo. He had connected the lake in the valley all the way up to the village square. A montage of John sleeping peacefully, eating with family, while the water continuously flows in the background. The village elder was speechless. He handed John a bag of silver coins. But here was the crazy part. John didn't have to carry a single bucket. The water just kept flowing. Whether John was sleeping, eating, or spending time with his family, the water flowed. And every time the village trough filled up, John got paid. David stood in the back of the crowd, leaning heavily on his cane, tears welling in his eyes. He realized the tragic truth. He had worked 10 times harder than John. He had bled, sweat, and sacrificed his health. But because he only relied on his own physical labor, his earning potential was limited by his physical endurance. John worked smart. He built a system. He built leverage. John eventually hired David to manage the village trough, giving his old friend a chance to recover. But David never forgot the lesson. He realized that brute force without strategy is just a fast track to burnout. David and John's village might be a story of the past, but their reality is ours today. Listen to me very closely. Hard work is incredibly important. You cannot achieve anything great without effort. But hard work alone is not a strategy. If you are running 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how hard you are sweating, you are still not reaching your destination. David represents so many of us. We burn ourselves out at jobs, side hustles, and businesses, trading our time for money, thinking that just grinding harder will eventually set us free. But true freedom doesn't come from carrying heavier buckets. True freedom comes from taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, and asking yourself, how can I build a pipeline? Stop glorifying exhaustion. Start glorifying efficiency. Work hard on building systems so eventually the system can work for you.